Harvard's largest study of startups looked at what's the biggest cause of failure. And the largest cause of failure is interpersonal issues. So that could be co-founder, advisors, investors, team. So the personal piece is your biggest risk. For us, the work starts with the individual themselves, because to engage with the world is to know yourself, and to know yourself is to engage with the world. And it really challenges the founder to answer the question of why are you building this business, and what is fundamentally the fire that drives you. And what that gives the entrepreneur is a really clear sense of
Welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us what we should know about the one and only Orr Vinegold.
Well, thank you for having me. Very excited. I'm Orr Vinegold, and we know each other through founders. So I run a company called Unrest, and our job is to help entrepreneurs who are building for good, for-profit businesses. And lots of stuff we're going to get into around how we support them and build connections fundamentally to do that. Before that, I spent a varied career doing all sorts of things, from big FMCG, working for Gillette and Braun on female hair removal coming out of university. Spent lots of time working for early stage startup founders and seeing great successes, seeing bankruptcies along the way, and lots to learn from there. I took some time out from business to go and run for politics and do some parliamentary stuff. So ran for the Labour Party, 2017 election, and also worked to set up an NGO for Israelis and Palestinian next generation of leaders in the region. And that's where I'm from. So I was born in Israel and moved to the UK multiple times. So kind of went back and forth, which has also kind of shaped my identity. How I connect with people, that particular skill set that I've got was honed over those experiences, which, were positive and challenging.
Wow. That was a very rich and colourful intro. I love it.
It's been a varied life.
It has been very nice to see you warmed up. Who are you from like a character perspective?
I have a very clear view of what my life has got to be about. And there's two things that I fundamentally see. One is, how do I become the best version of myself? And I prioritize spiritual, emotional, intellectual, and then physical versions of myself in that order. And the second part is, how do I contribute to the world and what the world needs in the biggest possible way? And I've defined my contribution as in the realm of engaging with the world, rather than in the realm of, say, my own personal work and engaging one-to-one with others, or say engaging in a small community, or in the realm of theories. I very much want to engage in the boldness of a global scale, so global concepts, global work. And that's where I think I need to, where I want to contribute, where I think I can, where I'm drawn to.
The four selves. Spiritual, physical, emotional. What's the other one?
Intellectual.
Intellectual. Okay, wicked. In terms of your impact, currently co-founder and CEO of Unrest, which is an incredible accelerator that so many epic early stage founders are going through, applying to, and you're making some serious waves here. The focus all around mission-driven founders making a big impact in the world. So it feels like your impact in the world is being leveraged through all of these other companies, which is incredible. And we can potentially talk more about Unrest as the conversation goes along. But specifically, we're thinking now about how we deal with the people side of work in startups. So how do you help people, founders going through the Unrest accelerator and who are you've invested in? How do you break down this problem?
Great question. So I think going back a step, if you are an investor or you are engaging with others, your biggest potential and your biggest risk point, particularly as an investor, is the human aspect breaking down. And Harvard's largest study of startups looked at what's the biggest cause of failure, and the largest cause of failure is interpersonal issues. So that could be co-founder, advisors, investors, team. So the personal piece is your biggest risk as any investor, whether you're an angel, a VC, or you're even working with others as a client. That's your biggest risk. So we look to mitigate that. And that's not where we started. That's just some data that we've added on to kind of justify why we do it. And I'll talk about why we initially had this hypothesis. But fundamentally, that's the biggest risk. And so part of our job is to mitigate that. And so for us, the work starts with the individual themselves, because to engage with the world is to know yourself, and to know yourself is to engage with the world. And so the founder has to know who they are and where their strengths and weaknesses are. So we begin with quite intense, almost trauma-esque work with the founders, with a workshop that we have external speakers come in to do. And it really challenges the founder to answer the question of, why are you building this business? And what is fundamentally the fire that drives you? And what that gives the entrepreneur is a really clear sense of the seeds of their resilience. Because if they know what drives them and that their business is some version of a manifestation of something that's happened in their life, then they are incredibly driven at a very clear way. And the second thing is that it gives them authenticity and a voice when they build their branding, when they talk about hiring, when they connect with other people. And it gives them something that they're, can transform something that is a shame, a cost center, let's say, shame, into something that is a opportunity and a profit driver for them. And so that's one of the alchemizing pieces that we do right up top. And then, just off the bat, we can get into this a little bit more, but we built a community, so entrepreneurs supporting each other. So the peer support is really important. And we now have entrepreneurs that stayed in our building for 4 years since the program launched, and they are part of our community membership model. And that's really critical. And then throughout the program, we do a lot of executive coaching. So each one of our entrepreneurs gets a coach. There's a ton of workshops that they can attend. And that's been quite the game changer. And it's interesting, when we launched Unrest, we thought that the biggest benefit was going to be how they build their brand and how they raise money. And the biggest benefit they tell us that they got from the program is who they met and the lifelong connections that have formed their community now to help them. And that's beautiful. It's great. It's kind of what you do at Founders, and it's part of why I found your work at Founders so inspiring and important, because it's feeding into the same hypothesis and the same kind of mold as we have. Yeah, but you just do it really, really well.
Quick 10-second pause to say that our newsletter is the highest value per sentence in your inbox. We share systems, prompts, and scripts that you can use today, because content without action is just noise. All the links in the description. Now, let's get back to the episode. And also why we click so well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just because of the understanding of how important this stuff is.
Totally, yeah.
I love what you spoke about before, which is helping people understand the fire that drives them.
Mm-hmm.
The seeds of resilience, this voice and authenticity. Can we go into the nitty-gritty of how you guys actually break that down?
Yeah, so there's a series of workshops led by very different groups of people, but fundamentally is the kind of start with why trauma type work. And what we have seen in that workshop is there's a lot of inter-founder sharing, trying to get into the seeds of why people have begun the business. And a lot of impact or mission-driven founders will begin companies as a reflection of something that happened to them in their life. So, my mother or my grandmother got dementia. She died. We didn't have any warning as the family. And somebody's building an early detection dementia tracking system, which can detect it 10 years earlier than what's happening currently on the NHS, for example. Or every time I went for a snack, it triggered an eating disorder in me. And so guilty snacking is a real issue. And so somebody's launched a business around that kind of messaging, or fertility. So there's a lot of these kind of personal challenges, and often people are are afraid to say it, and one of the first times they say it is in a workshop to another founder. And once they've said it out loud once, it opens the gates. And once they've written it and then shared it collectively in the group, and then once we get a hold of it, we really encourage them to start thinking about the next workshop, which is about how you build your brand. And one of the questions is, what's your fire? What's the thing from within you that drives you to do what you do? And we exclusively encourage them to be really frank about those things, even if it's really difficult for them to own and express where something's come from, because it can be really confronting to yourself.
And super vulnerable.
Very vulnerable, yeah.
If you haven't told that story before.
Exactly.
Publicly.
Or even to yourself. I mean, there's so many stories that we gloss over or we don't acknowledge to ourselves. And the moment you say it and you're accepted for it, and you're accepted by the external, it's much easier to accept the internal when you've had that kind of moment of realization and like somebody's not, reeling and running away and sort of judging me for it. So community and the interpersonal can have a power that kind of complements our own personal work.
I really love that, because I've always said that connection splits into connecting with ourselves and connecting with others. And I've always framed it in the way that you're limited by how deeply you can connect with other people, by how deeply you've connected with yourself. But actually, I love that you just sort of almost flip that on its head, that the more you connect with other people and are vulnerable there, then the more you can connect with yourself and be vulnerable with yourself. So it's not one, then the other. It's a circle that goes round, and they support and fuel on each other.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah. Why did you have why do you approach it from the assumption of you are the limiting factor in yourself? Why is that been your thesis?
That is a great question. I haven't ever questioned it. It always felt intuitive to me. Mainly because people prioritize connecting with others more than they prioritize connecting with themselves. It's been quite a new wave of people doing therapy and coaching and lots of deep reflection. And so we're moving from this era of, I'm not going to challenge my beliefs or try and better understand myself, until more recently. But it's always been like, let's try and understand other people.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably a more limiting factor than here, connect with other people, because people feel natural about doing that. I think it's maybe harder work to connect with yourself deeply, because you're sort of unpicking learned beliefs and ways of seeing the world and conditioning. So I think it's, at least for me, it seems harder. Maybe that's because I'm extroverted, and actually connecting with other people feels so much easier than challenging myself.
But the question is, do others challenge you more than you're capable of challenging yourself? And I would propose that if you surround yourself and you ask others, be challenging, ask them a challenging question, I want to be challenged. And we artificially create that situation with workshop leaders and founders, and we set the questions for people to challenge each other. So we create that. But I think you can create that in your friendships, your relationships, in your life with others too, where you ask for it. And I in my own experience, I challenge myself very, very harshly, and there's an aspect of that that's good. But others challenge me more intelligently, and the questions they ask are deeper and more interesting, and the questions that I haven't thought about. So I end up getting more from the external challenge to myself than my own challenge to myself.
Where do you find those external people challenging you? What relationship do you have with them most often? Is it the therapist? Is it the coach? Is it the best friend? Is it the co-founder? Who's it? Stereotype of that person?
I now tell people that I want feedback, as harsh as it can be, and I want to be challenged, and that I look for that in my relationship, in my friendships, in my communities, in my founders, in my co-founder, and I actually reiterate the message on a pretty frequent basis that I don't want this dynamic to be on a warm and comfortable space from my perspective, so please be challenging and give me those things, and I will then feed back if I'm not getting those things.
We are cut from the same cloth. So interestingly, I made a type form at uni,
Okay.
which was the only question was, what are 3 areas in which Asia can improve?
Yeah.
Sent it to my closest 10 or so people.
Yeah.
Mum, co-founder,
Amazing.
ex-girlfriend, best friends, like a whole range of people.
Awesome.
And it was such an amazing exercise and I loved it.
Yeah.
And I very much resonate with being your harshest critic.
Yeah.
Like no one's as harsh on me as I am on myself.
Mm-hmm. Preach.
Where does that come from?
For myself or for you?
Because you can start with you.
I'll start, and then you can drop in. Fundamentally, there is, I would say it's an esteem issue, a self-esteem issue, and a good enough issue. And am I good enough? And that feeds into the self-esteem. Then the question of why would I not feel good enough is the obvious next question. And once I dissect into that, I can get into moving, this can be a long answer. I'll give you the sort of spark notes.
Give me the long answer.
Yeah. Okay. Self-esteem can come from, I'm an immigrant, so a language challenge, or I've got a different name that's a funny name, or I went to a really unusual, different kind of school. I went to 9 schools by the age of 12. I lived in like multiple countries. The kind of challenging of not having a home and a stability can create an internal dissonance of what home and stability can look like, and that can really challenge your ability to perform at school. It can challenge your ability to have stable friendships, have the skills of building long-term relationships. So having an absent parent, my father kind of leaving at a young age, you can have abandonment issues that come from that. I grew up with lots of people who had high needs. So my mum set up an orphanage. We worked with disabled adults. And so her attention was diverted at times. There were lots of fascinating characters there. But this tapestry of your life ends up causing for everybody. And I think in my experience, I've met, sons and daughters of billionaires, of prime ministers, of, the rich and the powerful and the famous, and everybody has self-esteem challenges. It doesn't matter what life you've lived. And I can trace back in my life where those things come from and then tackle those things slowly over time. But I think we all, to some degree, have those challenges, and they come from different places. And so when you reach adult life, it manifests in ways that are not helpful for our lives. Certainly for me, haven't been helpful. And so, the tracing is really important, really critical. What about you, AJ?
I love that answer. And I feel like you've held up a big mirror, which I really appreciate. Definitely have on the lower end of self-esteem, for sure. But it's definitely getting a lot better and has done over the past couple of years, I think. Where does it trace back to? I think it comes back to this disconnection point, like the reason that I love connecting with people and my fire that drove me at the start, which I loved how you framed it. It's like this trauma that's then been turned into this positive fuel. Mine started with disconnection at school. Lost my dad when I was young, at boarding school from the age of 8. So you miss those parental figures. Also didn't find my set of people really at school. Always felt like relatively lonely looking back on it now. And like never one of like the cool kids.
Yeah.
Which at school is kind of like what everyone is rooting for. It's like that's the most important thing, right? Is to be part of the cool gang that everyone wants to be a part of and like be everyone's friend. No one actually gives that much of a fuck about academics unless you're like parents or unless you've built this future. Anyway, that I think was a big thing, and building that up since I think has just come from action and pushing comfort zones, like joining founders, like doing an Ironman, like starting any company. These all I think build up that self-esteem And now I've separated the reason that I came to my purpose around connecting people was from this lack and this scarcity of losing my dad, not having those close connections when I was younger, to now realizing the power and potential of helping people connect and me connecting myself and how magical that can be. And so what I've been nervous about is having this lifelong journey of being driven by this lack and scarcity, and running away from something as opposed to seeing the magic and the positive and the gravity and the pull that something positive can take us along with.
And this is a debate I currently have in my life, which is harnessing this challenging situation whilst also healing yourself. Because on one hand, you're like, if I lose this power of drive, which helps resilience and pushes me forward, do I then become less successful entrepreneur or less successful person in life, but a happier person, but a less successful person? And this is a current debate that I'm having. And a few kind of things that I've thought to start answering that question is, firstly, in becoming, what is it going to take for me to become more self-confident, have higher self-esteem? Is it satisfying a gap in myself, or do I need something external? I.e., is my work the thing that's going to make me feel more confident and have high self-esteem? Is it the fact that I can connect with people? I.e., that's still an external thing. Or am I going to have an internal feeling that is completely separated from what happens externally, whether the company is successful, whether I can connect with 1,000 people or 2,000 people or whatever it is, or deeply with one. So what drives success effectively, i.e. better self-esteem? And the second point is, when you take the trauma and convert it into an action in the world, what is ultimately motivating you? Is it healing yourself, or is it healing others and creating opportunities for others to be healed? And I realized that, thankfully, my motivator is to help others, and not necessarily build a business that then is just for helping myself, which is a really big difference. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense, but who would ever say that they're building a business to heal themselves?
So most entrepreneurs, when they first do this trauma start with why type session, come out of it and they're like, wow, this business is about me and my trauma. And they have this moment of realization for many of them. And they kind of see the business as an extension of themselves. And so this is where the egotistical entrepreneur comes in. And I've worked for people who see their business as a reflection of them, and the success of the business as a reflection of their success. And so that becomes really toxic because your ego is in the business. And so then our job is to separate the business from you and to still keep the drive and motivation and keep the message in there, but not for it to be so aligned, so closely linked to you that if somebody critiques your business, you're on the phone to them and shouting at them. And I've worked for a founder like that before, which became really toxic. There's no truth, there's no honesty, because they are the business and they use I language. This is a big thing that you can notice is like founders who will refer to their business as, I am pitching to X, or I am going into Sainsbury's, or I am whatever, rather than we are winning business here and there. And so they're very identifying with the business. And that's a danger. When we see that, we work on that separation. And early founders are the ones that typically have the most association and connection to their business in this ego way. And so we try and separate it and say, you've got a great drive, use that energy and build this business for others to help other people, and have that really as the external.
What does that work look like? That separation of ego from the business?
It's part of the brand building process that we do with our creative agency. So they create a strategy. So the moment that they create the strategy for how the business should communicate in the tone, that challenges the founder, because the tone and the aesthetic and the words and the way the business communicates starts to separate from the way that they communicate in their tone. And typically, as a founder, when you begin a business, most of your branding, most of your tone, everything that you say, it really comes from you. And so it's still very much you again, or I language. And so that starts to create a bit of a chasm, and they can see this externalization manifesting in tone and aesthetic. We're very hot on the I, we language piece. Like I pick up on that. We do office hours with our entrepreneurs. Also in the coaching work that founders do, you can see that. And a lot of it is the community. Like we keep our entrepreneurs in the building, and we've worked through, cohorts of entrepreneurs who've been through this work. And so they are there to also guide other people who are going through this process. And so there's quite a lot of one-to-one kind of hand-holding through this process. And then we do a lot of like workshops, visualizations, meditations, like neurology workshops on the 3 different parts of the brain: that I am, that I will, and I must. So we had that a couple of days ago, and that's led by some of our founders. And so kind of teaching them all the stuff as they're going through the program.
Can you double click on that, the 3 different parts of the brain?
Yes, so there is the ego, the I am part of the brain, which is your identity. And that's where memory, that's where your survival instinct lives. So that's where your perception of time lives, very practical part of the brain. That can be threatened. So that can be threatened from a physical perspective, but it can also be threatened from an ego perspective. Like if someone comes at you, it's like, you're not a great guy. Like, that's your identity. I'm a great guy. Then there is I will, which is very much about kind of action. So this is where your intellectual part of your brain lives. This is where if you're doing a meeting, you're really engaged. This is like if you're going out to do gardening, like the physical and the intellectual action part of your brain. And then the I must is your motivator. So it's the bit that basically helps you to keep on going, to decide what it is that you want to do. It's the bit that, and it's called the salience network. And it's the bit that really, if you're like tired after doing work for 30 minutes, so if you're in the gym and you're like, God, I can't do another 5 minutes running, or I can't lift this, it's the bit that might say, yes, you can, go for it. You can do more, carry on. And it's folks with ADHD struggle with that piece, the salience network, which is where dopamine is produced. That's where you can have challenges in motivating yourself. If that salience network is not being dopamine correctly, you can then suddenly be like, actually, no, I'm going to have chocolate. Or actually, I'm tired, I'm going to do something else. And when your salience network is tired, because it's willing you to do something, it's forcing you, it's like, right, keep on going, keep on going, keep on going. If you do that for too long, your salience network gets tired. When it gets tired is where you start falling into alcohol. It can be drugs, it can be sex, it can be a nap, it can be chocolate, it can be, I'm going to stop doing work, I'm going to watch some YouTube videos. It can be anything that is basically not the thing itself. And your brain just needs to like check out. Like I can't be me right now, and I can't do anything right now. So I'm going to check out.
That immediate dopamine hit.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. This is really deep and impactful like work on founder mental health and training.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And I think not enough accelerators and now funds are focusing on this at all. So I think this is such an incredible edge.
Thank you. Yeah.
Quick 25-second pause, talk about how startup leaders are athletes of the mind. And just like an athlete, you should treat your health as your number one priority. You can't show up for others if you're depleted. You can't pour from an empty cup, which is why my friend Dan's company, Heights, is a partner of the show. Heights are the world's best brain and gut supplements. I've been taking Heights for a couple of years and I feel like an elite mental athlete. It's a bit of a no-brainer. Click on the link in the description and start reaching your heights. Right, back to the episode. This sort of ties into people building resilience, which is a topic that comes up every single conversation I have, how do you break down the topic of resilience?
I mean, like the fundamental aspect we've started to get into, which is why are you like, what's your motivator? So your salience network will say to you, keep on doing this, and it needs sometimes a reason to do that, or sometimes it's just you have decided that is what you're saying. That's what you're going to say to yourself. You're not going to give up. People are motivated by different things, right? So my co-founder, for example, is amazing, and he is motivated by completing things properly. So, for example, he might be at the gym, and he'll be like, "I'm going to do 4 sets of 12," and he will do 4 sets of 12. And because he said to himself that that's what he's going to do, and because the numbers satisfy him, he's going to do it. Whilst for me, that's not a motivating pattern that works for me. For me, it's much more about, like, I'm much more motivated by seeing other people being helped, for example. And so part of my resilience is the feedback loop of pleasure of seeing the effect of my work. And I've known that from a young age that I need to see the results of my work. I can't be, I had a choice actually when I was younger to be a consultant or to be a brand leader. And I knew that being a consultant, I was too far away from the outcome to see the results of my work. And I was never going to be satisfied with that kind of work. And that's what drove me to being closer to the execution and seeing the results more quickly, because I knew I needed that to motivate me. So motivation is a huge driver of resilience. From my perspective, that's the starting point. If you've got a really good foundation there, you can go really far. The other piece is I really believe in this mantra of fix the roof when the sun is shining. And I fundamentally see that there is kind of 4 key pillars in life, and resilience is around how your core pillars are doing. And your pillars of like love and friends, financial and health, kind of work is a really critical part, and then family and home. And if your 4 pillars are in a good place, then you've got things to draw on when it starts raining. And when it's sunny, when things are well in your life, this is when you should absolutely double down on fixing your pillars and kind of optimizing your pillars and making them even bigger and even stronger. And so I was, having a great day today, and we were going to do this, really happy, and sort of thought today is a day where I should progress another one of my pillars. I should be thinking about doing something to help my future self. And that's a form of self-love. And so, again, long answer on resilience here, but knowing that when things are tough, you're going to want to draw on your resources, and you shouldn't wait to build your resources when the times are tough, and you should build them in good times.
Being proactive as opposed to reactive.
Yeah.
What does it practically look like to build on one of these 4 pillars? So you came in today, you're excited to have this conversation, as am I. And so you're like, cool, I'm going to add to one of my pillars. What's the next step? What does it look like? That process playing it out.
So it could be, I've got some challenging-ish conversations to have with friends or at work with people in our team. And it could be that today on the way here, I am noting down the spark notes of that conversation. Kind of what's the outline of those conversations? What's the key pillars of what I need to go through? It could be that I am reconnecting with a bunch of our investors because I'm in a great mood. I can kind of WhatsApp them with some really interesting news and little bits of tidbits of what's going on in the business, so that next week I can maybe set up some meetings and go for coffees, and down the line that's going to be something that's really useful. I might not be in the mood to do that, if I'm tired on a Friday, 4:00. And so you're kind of kind to your future self when got the energy and you use the energy well. And so those are kind of practical things that I'd recommend. And the way I think about it is at the beginning of every year, I do a vision quest where I write down these 4 pillars and what I want to achieve in each of these pillars across the year. And so I've got it on a piece of paper, I've got it written down. And when I have a question as to what I should do, I've got the objective and things that I can do really practically. And I can just jump in and be like, right, this is the year of X, and these are the activities I can do.
It's your life OKRs.
Yeah.
What does this year's life OKRs look like? I don't imagine that you'll remember them all, but I imagine you remember 1 or 2.
Well, so last year was really about self-esteem. and really about that confidence, this topic we just covered. So I did a lot of work on that, and that's been a 2-year goal. That's taken more than, I mean, it's a lifetime, but it was a big focus from a Vision Quest perspective for a couple of years. This year, it's very much about what I describe as my earthly being in a good place, and that is things like financial situation, home, my body, my physical body, and that's really in contrast to the previous years where I've focused on my emotional state of being. My spiritual state of being has been a big focus for most of my 20s, and so it's all kind of this more ethereal piece. I didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about my physical body, my practical earthly situation, or my possessions, my capital, things like that. So this year is about giving that more attention and the love it deserves, and being much more grounded.
Because also you realize that maybe you were lacking on those pillars after this time spent in this spiritual
Totally.
and emotional work.
Yeah, like, I mean, it was a period of being unbalanced, and there's a kind of period of, you know, when you asked me at the beginning, kind of, I listed the things that I valued from spiritual, physical, emotional, in the order, you know, put physical right at the bottom in, I think, in the original order, and that is still, you know, now I think back to that answer, even today, you know, there's still a hierarchy in my head about what's most important, and it's how I've prioritized it for, you know, 20 years of my life, and it's been in balance, and it's bad when it's in balance, I think. What do you think?
My mind went off on a bit of a tangent just
Go
on
on.
that last sentence where you said it's bad that it's in balance.
It's
because it being bad is a judgment.
Right, you're right. We've talked about this, yeah.
And the work that I do with my coach is all about inner and outer voices. And outer voices are judgments, assumptions, and expectations.
Nice.
Let's say, even if you were a monk,
Yeah.
you would be focused entirely on the spiritual side. And there's nothing bad about people being monks. So it's very rare for any one person, I think, to have all of these things balanced. And I think it feels very natural that they're in flux and flow, and some are more important at any one time, and then they switch and change, and over a lifetime, maybe it's more balanced. So what came to you thinking that having this imbalance felt bad?
I'm going to go on a tangent for a second, but hopefully it's interesting. I don't know if anyone knows about the Kingdom of Bhutan, which is the
happiest country in the world.
It's the one country in the world that measures its GDP, gross domestic product, by GNH, the happiness. And the chief economist is a guy called Ho Vin To, who I went and met a number of years ago. And he introduced this theory that really changed my life, which was, when you go out into the world with your life, you operate in one of the three arenas. You either operate in the personal arena, which is the monk example, the spiritual arena, where you are going to dedicate your life to be the change in the world, would be a manifestation of this idea, or a monk at the top of a mountain, spending their time meditating and engaging at the spiritual realm to make the world better. That's really the monk on the top of the mountain is a great image for that. The second is, do you operate in the realm of community, which can be university and peer-reviewed papers? It can be founders. It can be the work that you might be doing, AJ. It can be the work that my mom did when she set up an orphanage with a group of other people within a kibbutz, which was an enclosed community of people, and they had ideologies and they worked together communally, but the scale was 100, 200 people maximum. Or do you work in the realm of the world? And when he said that to me, it was super clear that my realm is the realm of the world, which is the realm of changing political structures or economic structures or philosophies, changing thousands and millions of people's lives through those things, rather than the other two. And it just clicked into place that all these debates about whether to be part of communities or to be part of the world, it was really clear that my goal had to be world. And communities and other things and the personal work can inform those, but they should not be on top of that goal. So when we think about why should things be in balance is because if you're trying to change the world or trying to engage in the world arena, and you're not off the world, off grounded, off, a house and money and physically well, you're not going to be able to make that change in the arena that you're trying to fight in. So I might be really spiritually enlightened, in which case I might be great at arena 1, monk on top of a mountain, but that may not necessarily be what I need for arena 3 in the world. And so you need to match your resources to the goal that you're going for.
And a great example of someone who's been from that arena 1 all the way through to arena 3 would be Jay Shetty, right?
Right.
Started off as the monk.
Yeah.
Literally wrote the book.
Great shout.
And has now had a massive podcast and is making the impact in the world.
Yeah.
Shedding these sorts of teachings.
Yeah. Nice.
That makes so much sense.
Great metaphor.
I love that.
Where are you? Because I with you, like from the external, like I debate if you are community or world, because I can imagine that you can take community to the world, but you have to be in both, right?
Yes, or at least have spent enough time, as you said, in each to understand them to then progress, right? I feel. So I'm trying to think about like these 3 layers. If someone's imbalanced with the amount of time they spent in each.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you spent time in community of people, let's say in your industry.
Yeah.
And you go on to impact the world, but you haven't done the work on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like a Donald Trump comes to mind.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or you just spend time on yourself, but then jump to the world without focusing on the community.
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like.
I think the question is like, if you think about physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual wellness, which, when you think about humans, and Trump is a great example, he's probably remiss in spiritual and emotional work on himself, maybe physical also. I mean, he looks relatively healthy for someone of his diet and his age, but there's a lopsidedness in leaders that have this unevenness. And the more you're a leader in the public world realm, the more you need to be strong in all of these arenas. But I think there are some particular arenas where you need to be incredibly strong. So if you're going to be a public figure, like politics, I would need emotional strength to be able to do that job. And that would actually be probably more essential than physical health and physical strength. There's a lot of politicians that look really unhealthy, are unhealthy, that their health diminishes over time. And at a certain point, you fall below a threshold that you can't sustain your life in that regard. But each of these arenas requires you to focus on some of these emotional, physical, intellectual, or spiritual arenas more or less than others. And I'd say like politics, you need to be emotionally strong because the amount of flack that you get is really, really, really big. If you were a founder that chose to not be the face of your company, you might need slightly less of that strength than somebody who has chosen to be the face of their company, because the things they have to deal with are much greater. So you have to pick your warrior for the battle that you're going into, basically.
And I love this whole focus on spiritual, emotional, intellectual, and these different layers, personal, community, world. Love to park that for now and go into a bit more about you.
Sure.
Love to help people connect with you as an individual. We've touched on things, but let's rewind and go back to born in Israel, 89?
88.
88.
Pre-war.
Pre-war, but during pretty intense conflict periods.
Yeah.
Then moved to Aberdeen, strong, single motherly figure, which we also share that upbringing. You didn't know any English, like came with Hebrew, moved to Aberdeen, of all places.
Yeah.
Back to Israel for a year, back to Aberdeen with your mum, building this orphanage. It was in a castle, if I'm right, I think.
Broadly, these are all the correct bits. Yeah.
Bits maybe mashed together.
Exactly. It's the trailer.
And then this NGO to try and help with the Israel-Palestine conflict. That's so interesting. Can you tell us more about that story and experience?
Yeah, so having grown up in the Middle East and seen what the challenge was, I saw what happened in the Oslo Accords from a 7-8-year-old's perspective. And
Sorry, what are the Oslo Accords?
the Oslo Accords were the closest that Israel and Palestine have come to peace. So it was in 1994, 95, 96, and it was a peace deal between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And so it was peace for land. It was the move towards a two-state solution, security for the Palestinians, security for the Israeli state, and a very difficult thing to have arrived to. And just the spark notes is that the kind of problem that the NGO was solving was what I saw happen in the Oslo Accords and in 95, 96. So, and these are the seeds of what's happening in the conflict now as well. So the peace treaty was on the table. It got signed in Camp David with Clinton there, Yasser Arafat, and Yitzhak Rabin, who is the Israeli prime minister. He then flew back to Israel, had a peace rally in Tel Aviv, and he was shot and assassinated and killed by a right-wing Zionist Israeli Jew who shot him in front of sort of 500,000 people in a big square in Tel Aviv for giving away Jewish lands to the Palestinians. And so, he was dead. They had to run an election, and it was Benjamin Netanyahu against, the number 2 in the party, Shimon Peres, and Netanyahu ended up winning that election. And he won it by something like 20,000 votes. And what happened was that in that gap between the assassination and the win, there were terrorist attacks. There were the religious right coming out in favor of Netanyahu. You had business people. You had this whole kind of plethora that you need for sustainable peace, these institutions. They ended up crumbling and falling away, and the country ended up tilting to the right. And we've had, Netanyahu right-wing government in Israel now for 20, 30 years now. And so peace is as far away as it's ever been. And I hope those are famous last words. I really do. So what I saw was that for peace, you don't just need one institution to work, i.e. the political arena. You need the business arena, the religious arena, the civic arena of media, civic organizations. And so you need these multiple arenas to be working in tandem. And I also realized that the current leaders of, at the time, Mohammed Abbas and Benjamin Netanyahu were not the right people to bring peace. And so you needed regime change from the inside. And so I looked at what could the next generation of leaders do, like people who are 5, 10, 15 years away from leadership. And so we started this idea of how do we bring Israelis and Palestinians who are top leaders in the fields, whether it's in parliament, in business, rabbis, imams, and how do we bring them together for a retreat and have them work together for a multi-decade period and find the next Mandela, find the next kind of leaders that can come through. And it was kind of a multi-generational approach.
Wow. That sounds like it.
A dip off to do that for a bit and then come back to this.
Just like it's a casual side project.
It was actually, yeah.
What happened?
We met some amazing people. We had some funding secured. We were, running a great program. And then this is one of the great lessons is that I was working with a stakeholder on it, and they were a charity in the Forest of Dean called the Asher Center. And they got really nervous about their own legacy. They got nervous. We're going to have speakers from Northern Ireland, from Colombia, from the Troubles, prime ministers. We had the national security agencies, SO 14 and 15 from the Metropolitan Police involved in security for this kind of thing. And they got really nervous that somebody would get killed at this event and that they would get blamed and the legacy of what they had built was going to be at risk. And they built this peace center. And it became quite high profile and risky for their own personal legacy and their own legacy for the center. That they said, look, we can do it, but we can do it at a smaller vision. We can do it at, don't bring members of parliament on the Knesset, don't bring people from Gaza, don't bring Hamas people, bring lower level people, low level participants who can have less impact in the world, i.e. move from this realm of world to the realm of community. And they asked me, would that be acceptable to you? And by that point, I was so clear about my work needing to be in the arena of world that I said no. That just was really not going to fulfill my drive, and motivation was not going to help me be resilient, was not going to help me achieve. I couldn't do that at community level. I had to do it at world level. Otherwise, I couldn't do it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Could have changed the course of history. That's weird.
Not at that scale.
No, but it's interesting that if it had gone ahead with the original vision in mind.
Yeah.
How long ago was this?
That was 7 years ago. Yeah.
7 years ago.
We had the funding all lined up. It was very, very sad, very heartbreaking. And in the end, I still live as a somewhat shameful about what's going on in Israel-Palestine. It still bears on my identity and my feelings. I'm a empathetic, human-first person, and I struggle. It's heartbreaking for me to see a community on my doorstep that my people are doing things to that I find very difficult. And so it's part of healing my own shame too, in terms of what I'd seen.
And so maybe that was too driven around the ego, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, how much of that was for them and how much of that was for me. Yeah, exactly.
Fuck, man, that's powerful.
Yeah, it was.
Huge respect. It's such an incredible way to spend your time, because also, like, before then you were in the corporate FMCG world, like you were a L'Oreal boy, just like I was.
That's right.
And then Savsay, and then Little Moons, and
Go to Parliament in between that.
Parliament, and then you going to build this NGO. That's crazy that you have this shift from. I'm assuming you're in the UK at that point.
Yes, I'd come back. The idea was to take them out of the conflict zone and give them like headspace that was not surrounded by the influence they would have at home, and the influence that they would have at home would probably, some of them had to come in secret. Some of them, we had to give them like a fake conference to go to. They had to like be attending under other aliases. Yeah. So they were the real brave ones ultimately.
And looking at it now, like, it's obviously been a crazy 6 months.
Yeah.
How do you see it? From what perspective have you taken?
I always say I really, really hope for a peaceful resolution to this situation. I hope that something good can come out of this situation. At the moment I saw what happened on 7/7, I knew what the Israeli response would be. I didn't realize it would be this far. But I knew there would be a disproportionate response in terms of lives lost and in population affected in that regard directly. And so, having grown up there, I know exactly how it works. And so I knew that what was coming was going to be really strong and horrific. So honestly, I actually I cried that day for what happened on the hostages and on the Israeli side, and obviously, had friends and family who were going to the festival, who'd almost been at that festival. Family that have been in the army, lots of kind of connections on the Israeli side, and sort of everyone in Israel was affected by that, and that was heartbreaking personally. But also I knew what was going to come. So intellectually, I was also heartbroken, weirdly, and just felt like, I don't know if we can have peace. Like, I don't know if this is going to happen in my lifetime now. And I sort of lost hope in that moment for a resolution in my life, which was sort of, I was grieving for that too.
Something you proactively invested a lot of time and energy into, literally getting away from that exact scenario.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and Yeah, and there's a lot of ego in it. Like when you talk about the I am, my personal identity, part of it is where I'm born, where my family are, where my culture is. And so when your identity is wrapped up with things that you don't agree with, probably Brits listening may have felt this after Brexit. I don't know if you had the experience of going abroad and sort of feeling, it wasn't me, I didn't vote for this, or, this wasn't me. There is a bit of that at a pretty horrific human level that I feel, and it's tough to be part of a culture, an identity, that you also see things that you think, God, I wish people weren't treated like this. So it challenges your I am in a big way. So there's a cultural dissonance. It's hard to. Again, it's like the moving around a lot. It's like they're not having a home, or not having stable friends, or not having a stable family situation. Any of that instability and change causes, it creates challenges for you with opportunities. But, in yourself that there's a silver lining to the challenge that you got, and silver lining to this challenge. And I try to think much more about how can you alchemize it to something good. And I'm sort of curious. I mean, we both lost parents just in different ways, and curious how you alchemize that into something good in your life. Like, how do you flip when your stability is rocked in that way?
Great question. And for a long time, I was using it as fuel in a negative sense, almost victimized. To me, like, give me sympathy. This is the thing, the big, like, horrible thing that no one's arguing with. It's like, horrible.
Yeah,
like, it's no one being like, well, that's not that bad, mate. Just one parent gone, that's fine. No one's saying that, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I sort of lent into that a lot more when I was younger, I think. And now it's a part of the story, for sure. But I definitely don't feel uniquely disadvantaged. If anything, as you've stated, or like lent into, used it as fuel and shifted the perspective and decided to focus on the opportunities that it's given me as opposed to the lack, which is the obvious thing. Nonetheless, that's a very rational way of looking at things.
Yeah.
And that's a very conscious and intentional way of reframing a situation consciously and like rationally. But actually, without doing the work on it, the emotional side is still screaming from the scarcity, from the lack, from the disconnection, from the hurt, the pain. And I think that's still work I'm doing and having to. I mean, it's been like 18 years since he passed away. So it's got a lot more used to it. You're just like, oh, it's a scar. It is there. It hurts if you press it really hard, but it's never like that bad. And so I think I haven't pressed it really hard in quite a while. So there are two sides to the coin. The conscious, rational side, I'm like, amazing opportunity. Obviously, I wouldn't ever wish it on anyone. Like, of course not. But am I, in a weird way, sort of grateful for the opportunity? Of course. I'm super grateful, because that's all I can be. Like, I don't get to choose what happened or what will happen. All I get to choose is how I'm going to respond to it. So I'm going to choose to respond positively, because responding negatively is pretty fucking depressing and it doesn't actually help me that much. Whereas saying, oh, I'm so lucky for this and like so grateful for the opportunities, that benefits me way more. Nonetheless, the emotional side, I think, still needs some healing and some work and attention and care, and like that young boy needs to be like hugged a little bit.
Yeah. When you say you haven't pressed it, pressing doesn't sound huggy and loving. Pressing sounds challenging. Is that how you mean pressing, or what do you mean by pressing?
Yeah, it's a great picking out of a word. It feels, well, it's like doing therapy. It's like, it's not super comfortable going into therapy.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, you're still probably like hugging the young boy that was within me, right? So I suppose it's the two combined, and there are probably healthier ways of doing it, and there are less healthy ways of doing it. So I think therapy is pretty healthy and probably less like pushing it till it hurts. I suppose that depends on your therapist and how deep they go, how hard and fast.
Is there bits of it that you just haven't gone to, or like you feel like there's this box or this room or this just something that you haven't gone into? Is that what you mean by like haven't pressed as hard?
That feels aligned, yes, but I'm trying now to rack my brain as to like what is a good example of this. Like maybe my relationship with discipline. So let's say, maybe like my relationship with discipline and love. So my dad was in the army, and he was raised by my grandfather, who was a commander in the Navy. And interestingly, my grandfather on the other side was a colonel in the army. So my mum was raised in this military household. My dad was raised in this military household. So I'm very much the product of military upbringing, which is generally like, eat your food, shut up, behave, stand in line, and stand to account, whatever. And my dad, especially, that very much trickled through, where it was like, if you don't finish your dinner, it's going in the fridge and you have to have it for breakfast. It's like hard and fast. And we did things that in the ways that he wanted to do them. It wasn't like I'm going to consult with us as a team and decide what we'd like to do together. It was like, we're going surfing, we're going to watch this film, we're going to do this. And I was like, yes, sir, of course we are.
Got it. Not an empathetic democracy.
Exactly. And also not like loving and cuddly.
Yeah.
And like quite cold and quite distant in a way. But again, the rational side of me is like, well, what else did he know? Like, that's his upbringing. How else is he going to know any different? So like, I can empathize with that side. But I think then I question like, what is love, baby? I know. Exactly. Because that felt like it's like very tough love, right? And interestingly now with Laura, we are like so physically affectionate. Like physical touch is definitely one of our shared love languages, but that was like so lacking and scarce when I was younger. Again, boarding school and like distant father. Mum's not super cuddly either. So like it's so interesting, challenging. Like what does love mean to me from an abundance perspective, as opposed to just like moving away from scarcity, and how much have I digested like how pissed off I was with him and how he raised me. Because like the anger is more the emotional side. Like I said, I keep on going back to this like rationalization of like, oh yeah, but he didn't grow up in the best way either, and understandable. And like that's what I keep on coming back to, because the emotional side feels more raw and vulnerable. Which is like I like cried loads and he was like asleep on the sofa because I just wanted to go to bed. And it's like I haven't really gone there. Very often to like really understand that emotional impact,
because that's hard to admit, I imagine, or even inch towards admitting the hard grey of life of like our parents have good and bad sides, and when someone is passed away, the idea of critiquing or being negative or being hurt or judging someone's negative sides, even though they affected you,
so difficult.
Must be hard.
So difficult, right? And I actually went on this journey in a way quite last year around trying to better understand him, because also mostly with my mum, I only went him like occasionally. It was very like imbalanced in that sense for various reasons that I also don't really know, to be honest. Various custody things, whatever. And so I didn't know him very well. And I'm also not very in touch with many of his friends, which had loads of friends. And so I'm also like, I kind of want to know about the bad sides to him. And that was kind of how I was framing it. That was like, there are probably some things that happened in my childhood that I wasn't fully aware of. And you block out memories and you sort of shut them down. but I'm sure other people were more aware of them than I was, and might add colour to this picture. And that was sort of the draw for me, because it felt like the thing that wasn't being spoken about for this exact reason. It's like, well, was he abusive in some way? Like, would I ever know that?
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, like, would I ever know how that impacted me as a young boy, and therefore how it's impacting me today? But no one's ever going to say that to a son who's lost his dad. Be like, yeah, well, your dad was a bit of a twat though, wasn't he? Like, no one's going to say that, are they? But that's really interesting information.
I think they might.
They might do. You're right. And that then requires like a certain like build up of conversation and trust, and like the reason why I'm trying to find this out. But at the same time, Lara was amazing at summarizing. Lara specifically helped me frame this in terms of like, you may not know the bad sides, but you also may not know the good sides as much. And actually, maybe being a dad for him was really hard, but he had the most incredible friendships, which I know that he did. But I don't know anything about that side of him. And that's also interesting, but also that didn't impact me. So, like, for what reason am I doing this exploration work?
It's kind of like part of your identity is you are the son of, and this fact that he died is part of your identity. Yeah. It's part of the things that have shaped you in such a big way. He is, whether he's here or not, been a huge part of your life, actually. Yeah. And knowing what that bit of identity is, including the beautiful bits and the bits that might have shame or bits that you want to hide from, is like similar to the experience I talk about of like my fatherland, my motherland of Israel has beautiful bits and has things that I really struggle with the identity of. And like actually admitting it to myself that like these things are shit and this person is crap or this whatever is like, it feels so difficult to like confront it and be like, it's part of, how is it part of me? But I also don't love it or respect it. But like that relationship is so complicated and I'm still stickily working on it. And it sounds like there's some stickiness in your
100%
dynamic there. I kind of hope that there is that confronting it and being more open and more honest, like rather than putting it in a box and hiding from it, the fear of what's behind the door, I hope, is bigger than what's behind the door.
Almost always is, isn't it?
Why do you say almost always? You see, you're skeptical.
I don't want to like generalize to be like the fear behind the door is always bigger than the actual whatever is behind the door.
Yeah.
But I suppose worst case scenario planned. So in a world that I was like, cool, he could have been this horrible person.
Right.
And like that's a reality that I'm gonna have to brace for if I do go down this path. And I am and will be going down this path a lot more. But again, this is like the emotional work that I'm like, do I want to prioritize this right now? Do I want to push on this thing? It's going to take up a lot of energy, like a lot of time, a lot of emotional energy, which then have ripple effects bigger than I can probably like foresee. So like, how deep do I want to go on this? When? But very keen on the whole. It's just like another one of those topics. I'm like, fuck, like that's gonna be exhausting.
So I have a debate about this. I think about this in two ways. How much energy does it cost me per day to carry this thing, or per month or per year, to like carry whatever might be behind this door or the current relationship in a way that it is, and how much energy would it take to resolve that? And I think if you sum up all the energy that's taking you to like hold these multiple truths and these fears and all these things, I suspect from my experience that's a large amount of energy. And if you weigh that up, and then the second bit is, if I solve it, for how many years of my life will I have the silver lining benefit of having solved it and the ninja and like the spike I get from having solved this thing, which is going to be a really big thing in my life. And like the bigger the trauma, the bigger the spike that you can develop from it, is my view. So that's how I motivate myself to go and like dive into that cold water of something I really don't want to be thinking about and doing.
Quick pause to say, if this show has brought you some clarity, then hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one, because one insight at the right time can change everything. Plus, it fuels the show so I can keep on showing up for you. Right, let's get back to the episode. Yeah. maybe you've inspired me. I have been on this journey slowly for a good year and a bit, and I've had some conversations. Definitely not all of them, definitely not many of them.
Yeah.
But we're definitely getting there slowly but surely. That feels like a beautiful note to wrap up this very deep, diverse, and open conversation. So thank you so much. This
Pleasure.
Amazing. And just massively appreciate you, how you think about the world, how much you are doing for people and specifically founders. And I'm just really excited to be on the sidelines cheering you on and watch you grow and have this huge impact.
Thanks, AJ. Thanks for the work you do and inviting me into your community of founders and into this community of watchers and listeners. And we're very aligned, so it's wonderful to spend time together. And hopefully we get a part 2 and part 3 down the line.
Let's just start a podcast together, mate.
Sounds great. That's what the world needs.
Exactly.